If there's one thing I've learned, it's that getting outside is always worth it, no matter the weather. Welcome to Humans Outside, where we're building a life around spending time in nature while learning from fascinating outdoor-minded guests. I'm Amy Bouchatz, a journalist originally from the beach in California, now working to love nature from my home in Alaska. Since September 2017, I've spent at least 20 consecutive minutes outside every single day, no matter what. Ready to hear from experts and outdoor lovers who make heading into nature just a part of who they are while we work to do the same? Let's go! Hey humans! While we're here in between seasons, I'm having a lot of fun bringing you some of our best episodes and most popular episodes from the last year or so. Today's episode is a favorite of mine and really timely as you might be trying to think of a perfect holiday gift to give an outdoor lover. This episode, The Secrets to Making the Best Coffee Ever Outside, is with Tim Gravel, a co-owner of Kaladi Brothers Coffee here in Alaska. I love my coffee outside, near a fire, out of the back of a car after a cold adventure, in the morning after waking up in a tent, and so many other places. My favorite outdoor space might even be sitting with you, having this chat on a perfect morning off the beach near that campfire with that cup of coffee. Tim's advice is great for anyone who makes coffee outside, but listen carefully for his advice on the tools of the trade, which are what would make great holiday gifts. Another perfect holiday gift might be a Humans Outside Challenge Kit, which you can find now on humansoutside.com. These kits are designed to help you tackle the challenge of heading outside every day for a year. We've got 3 levels, and I'm really hoping you find them a helpful way to get the inside scoop on this outdoor challenge thing. Pro tip, coffee also helps. All right, now, on to the episode. Let's go. When it comes to heading outside, and okay, fine. When it comes to doing literally anything before 2 p.m., I prefer to have a cup of coffee in my hand. If you've listened to the Humans Outside podcast at all, you already know about how much I love the coffee. And it's not just because it's liquid sunshine, it's also because of the warmth, comfort, and community it brings. Coffee to me is the perfect pairing with an outdoor adventure, a morning around the campfire, or a prep for my favorite, the long run. Or, okay, literally anything. But what's the best way to pair coffee with the outdoors? How do we make coffee when camping or backpacking? Today's guest, Tim Gravel, is going to help us answer some of those questions and more and talk about his own outdoor story. He is the co-owner of Kaladi Brothers Coffee, one of the largest coffee roasting companies in Alaska, with 17 cafes and a mobile coffee truck that magically appears at basically every community event I attend. Tim, welcome to the Humans Outside podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So we start these episodes just imagining ourselves in our guest's favorite outdoor space, hanging out and chatting. I prefer to imagine myself with a cup of coffee in this imaginary world, but where are we with you today?
Well, it always starts with the coffee, and it doesn't matter, like you said, it doesn't matter if it's outdoors, indoors, going for a long run or bike. I have to have the coffee first. But up in the Clearwater Mountains off of the Denali Highway is a very, very special place to get out to, and particularly in the fall because you get all the colors, and it's cold in the morning, and so when you get up, there's frost, and there's nothing better, even if I didn't do my best in making the coffee. It's just the best to have that warm cup of coffee, and looking out over as the sun comes up and it starts to get light enough to start to see things. Back there, it's just a really special place.
Yeah. Oh man, so beautiful. And I can absolutely imagine myself there. There's just something about that cool, crisp air and crawling out of your tent and just that moment, and then just sitting there and watching all of that unfold is just one of the most peaceful, meditative, rejuvenating, inspiring, all the words.
Right. It just grounds you and it puts you in the moment, and you're not thinking about other things, and you're just listening and you're hearing what's going on. And we've had certain situations where we've been able to hear a bull moose calling cows, and it's just, you don't get that often. And to be up there and pretty much nobody around, and with mountains on both sides of you, and you just hear that going on, it's special.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can't wait to talk to you about my favorite subject, as we've already mentioned, the coffee. But first, we want to hear about you and your outdoor story. So tell us, how do you like to get outside? What's your favorite thing?
Uh, I think my favorite thing is it's hiking. Whether it's hiking back to go fish some creek, or if it's hiking to go hunting, it's just getting out and walking for a while, and just being in and taking in the smells. And um, I just love being out in the early fall, or well, anytime in the fall, and just being present back there. So just putting some miles on your feet. It's hard. It sometimes it's challenging, but it's always satisfying. So
Yeah. I think there's something like about the challenge that is linked to how satisfying it is. Because you could sit outside and smell all those things, right? And
right,
and
right,
have that moment. But the fact that you're not just moving, but challenging yourself in the way you move is just such a strong part of that.
exactly. And there's a
Uh,
lot of stuff out there too. Like you're paying attention.
yeah,
And I don't know. I just feel like when in your day to day life, you just go through it so fast, and things
right.
happen that you're just not, all your senses aren't kicking in. But after a few hours of being out there, you really start to hear things. You really start to just notice things that you may not just being in town walking around.
Yeah, absolutely. I recently had hip surgery, and so my definitions of what's challenging outside has shifted. Um, for me, a few months ago, I would have said, going for a really long run, that's a big challenge, or running up a mountain, that's a challenge. And now my challenge is, navigating a 1 mile walk in the woods with my crutches, right? Like it's
Oh.
but that's really driven home for me this idea that a challenge is personal. It's not about what someone else does. It's about what you're doing
Right.
in that moment. So it's been such a good reminder of that. Uh, so what compels you to get outside? What and how do you inspire yourself to keep on doing it when the weather's bad or that fabulous Alaska darkness creeps in?
Right. Right. I think it's a peace of mind.
Mhm.
It's that place away, and it doesn't matter. Like I said, if it's winter, we do a lot of hiking out to a cabin my wife owns, and we hike out there. It's been in her family for 50 years, and it's hard and it's challenging, and it's been some of the hardest hikes I've ever been on due to the snow conditions. But but everything, all your daily stresses just melt away, maybe through the pain of accomplishing it and getting there. But it's a release. And
Yeah.
it always happens. It's I never have an experience where I go out and I go, oh man, that wasn't. I wish I didn't do that.
Right.
um,
Yeah. Well, and
so
and
it's
I think that maybe people who have, I want to describe walking through this challenging snow conditions,
sure.
because if you don't live where there's snow, and honestly, before I lived here, I had absolutely no idea what that meant. So, what do you mean by that? What is a
Oh,
challenging snow condition to walk through?
this was epic. So we went back to her cabin, and you can take and we actually we had a snow machine with a trailer. We towed a bunch of gear in for the winter, for preparations for the winter. And but it was a new snow, and it was about 2.5, 3 feet deep,
Hmm.
and it didn't really have a good base to it, so you sunk pretty far. And we had snowshoes, but there's a point where you have to stop and you have to hike into the woods and break a trail. And breaking a trail when the snow, with your snowshoes on and the snow still going over your knees, um, it's soft snow. It's really hard. So this was nighttime, and we punched a trail into the cabin. It's about a half mile long. I went back out. The snow machine was stuck at the time, and I went back out and realized, oh, we had left most of our gear in the trailer, and we hiked in, and we punched in a little trail, but not enough for a snow machine to get through. And I decided, well, I'm going to take this trailer off the snow machine, and I'm going to tow it in by myself and drag it. Well, there's a little like 18-inch wide trail of where we hiked in with and out with snow shoes, but the trailer itself was probably about 36 inches wide. So it would like to hang up on the high point would be where we didn't walk, and the trailer would be up high, and then it would dig in on the other side, and then it would end up filling up with snow.
Oh my gosh.
So not only as I went in farther, I was more tired, but the trailer was getting heavier and heavier as I went. So anyway, and my wife had stayed back at the cabin just to turn it, to put the wood stove on and try to heat it up, because it was cold. It was probably 10 degrees outside too. So I'm pulling this thing in the dark, and it's one step at a time, and it was painful. But once I got in and it was warmed up and it was over, it was just, I'll never forget it. And it was special,
it's one of those moments where you regret every decision that has led to this point, but but afterwards you regret none of those decisions, and you're so glad you did it, and you're glad you're there. And it's just like mind over matter to get to that moment. And if you spend enough time doing things like this in life and outside, that moment will probably, like, you might question, is this moment going to come where I do not regret this? But it's likely to be at the end that you think, okay, this was a pretty good, okay choice. And you just got to hold on to that. So.
Right. I had a good friend of mine would always say, you could do anything for a day. So you keep repeating that in your head. I could do anything for a day. I could do anything for a day just to get through that.
Yeah, exactly. I tell myself, like, you can do anything for a mile. And just so maybe there's another mile after that, technicality. So and then you can do anything for a day. That's so true too. Like, especially when I'm faced with flying across country with my kids, I think you can literally do anything for a day. This does not have to happen again tomorrow. Just get through today. It's such a strong mindset to carry, and takes practice. So, like many Alaskans, you're not actually originally from here, but also, like many Alaskans, you came here and then you just couldn't peel yourself away.
Right.
So, like, very normal story, right?
Right.
What do you think it is about the outdoor landscape here in Alaska that does that, or did that to you?
It's so vast. And I think that I have a specific moment. I remember I came up and I was I had just graduated high school. It was actually my second time up, but I came up as a trip from my parents. And I was hiking up Arctic Valley, and I got to the top, right where the top of the ski resort, the offloading is. And I could see back that valley. And I just thought, God, this is so beautiful. And it just stuck with me. And so I knew at that point I wanted to come back and finish college and up here in Alaska, just to live up here. But it's so beautiful, and it doesn't take much to get out and experience it, and it's so close to home. It just draws you in. I love it.
Yeah, you described the fall earlier, and I don't know that I remember this smell from other places that I've lived that have fall. I'm originally from the beach in California, so no fall there.
Right.
But we lived in Tennessee right before we moved here. So we do, you experience changing seasons there. And there's this smell that is in the Alaska fall that is sort of, it's like this sour, it sort of smells like high bush cranberries, if anyone's
Right.
ever smelled that. It's like decomposing leaves. My husband jokes it's the smell of death, but but it's like this sour sweet smell that only happens in the fall. And when you first smell it, you're like, my goodness, what is that? And then it's kind of intoxicating. Do you know what I'm describing?
Absolutely. That's exactly it. It is that fermenting or that dying of plant leaves, but it is that high bush cranberry smell. And
Yeah.
it's it it is it overtakes you, you get in there and it's just like, oh, I love this.
Yeah.
And I grew up in California too, and yeah, we didn't have fall.
No, none of that there. It's funny because people, and I would agree with them, describe the smell of high bush cranberries as stinky socks. And yet, like, can't get enough of that. So,
Right.
which is, for the record, not true of
it's
like
not quite
actual stinky socks. So,
right.
just in case anyone thinks I'm a weirdo. So, okay. So, you got into coffee by first
Right.
helping a friend at the Kaladi Brothers warehouse.
Yep.
All right. So I want to talk to you about how of coffee outside here in a minute. But first, I want to talk about the why, especially as it pertains rather to friends and heading outside. Kaladi uses the tagline, a catalyst for community. So why does that principle make sense for a coffee business? And what is it about coffee itself that causes that to make sense?
Well, I think that coffee historically has always been something shared amongst people, and in coffee houses, people gathering and talking, and just having community and sharing ideas. And so that's been the place for a coffee house, or the purpose for many years for coffee houses. And but for us, it's been about 30 years ago, we just decided that we needed something more than just to make coffee. Our cause had to be greater than just to produce coffee. And what we noticed was, in our coffee house, at the time we only had 2 stores, and we noticed, you had a lot of teachers, and you had professional people coming in. You also had a lot of labor people and a lot of other. We always joke, Isaac's honey wagon would show up every morning, and he'd come out and he'd come in and get a coffee, and he'd be talking to someone in their suit going to work. So it was kind of like, you see this cool group of people coming in and having coffee. So we got together, this group of people, and just talked about what is it, and just to be a catalyst for community was what we came up for, or came up, with the idea, and just to try to create community, to have people share ideas and just come together and look at each other and see, like, yeah, we're different, but we're the same, and we share the same thoughts. And I don't know, it's a
Well, especially in
cool
this day
place,
and age, it's like, the thing I like about this is it's not unlike the spending time outside. Like, we can all agree that spending time outside is awesome. And there's so much to disagree on, or there's so much that we've found to disagree on. It's almost like we're hunting for it
right.
now. But when you get outside, we can all agree mountains, awesome, leaves,
Right.
fantastic. And have that community there. And then the way that, having it's almost like a ceremony. Like, I'm blanking on the word I want to use, but it's sort of this practice of, gathering around something that you enjoy in a place that, it's that third place concept, right?
Right.
And then that's another thing that we can agree on and sort of build a community around.
Right. Yeah, it's been great, and we've revisited, is this still important? Is this still something that we as a company now, 300 people, is this still something we really are behind? Is this how we feel? And overwhelming, it is. Everyone still wants that catalyst for community, that place.
Yeah. And I mentioned your coffee truck earlier. What I did not mention was that it gives me the coffee for free, which let me just say how much I appreciate that. So,
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
been a great that truck. We had a van where we used to throw a cart in the back, and then we had a trailer that we would pull behind that was kind of already set up inside that we just had to open it up and turn the generator on. And then we went to this truck, and the truck's been great. And it's a 1966 Chevy step van, and it's pretty cool. And yeah, we take that around to events and whatever we can, schools and whatever, and it's just a
Yeah.
giveaway.
It's so great.
Giveaway.
And for those non-Alaskans listening, things happen here when it's cold outside, and a hot cup of whatever is really welcome. And so, and even in the summer, so it's definitely been awesome to see you guys out there, and awesome to just such a huge benefit for me and my friends. And thank you. We love it. Don't
It's our
stop.
pleasure. We won't.
Great. So now the part we've all been waiting for, where we get practical about coffee outside, which I'm understand you to be an expert on. So before anything else, tell us, how do you drink your coffee outside? What's your favorite way to brew and consume? What do you do?
Absolutely. My favorite is a AeroPress. It's my jet boil and to heat up my water, and it's an AeroPress. And an AeroPress is basically a plastic cylinder that you can put a filter in the bottom. You fill up coffee to a certain point, you fill up water to another point, you let it steep for just a short period of time, and then you actually press, kind of like a French press. You press your water through your coffee. It's fairly quick. It can't break for the most part. You got to really try to break it if you broke it. And it's just packable. You just throw it in wherever you're going and you can go. It's easy. And it actually produces pretty darn good coffee.
We have a lot of listeners who are working on being outdoorsy, but maybe don't feel like they're complete pros yet. And let's be honest, we're all learning. What's the easiest way you recommend for doing the coffee thing when let's start with a traditional campground car camping, and maybe this is like a new realm to you?
Sure. I think the Melita pour over. So that's just like the little cone filter.
Okay.
And if you could bring your coffee ground if you want. Of course, in the whole coffee world, you don't really want to grind your coffee too far before you brew it. But, when you're camping, and it's still going to taste great, because when you wake up in the morning, that's the thing you want, and it's going to be awesome. So if you pre-grind it, it makes it a lot easier. Otherwise, you have to bring like a little hand grinder, unless you have power somewhere, but a little hand grinder. But a Melita drip filter cone is just a cone. You have a filter in it, you put your coffee in it, and then you just pour your hot water over the top, and it pours right into your cup. Super simple, works really well. And it's the only downside is it's a 1 cup at a time typically.
That is my downside to that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie to you. So.
Yeah, that's and I've played with things before. So it's like I went on a motorcycle ride up to Prudhoe Bay, and I had 4 guys, and of course everyone looks at me as like, oh, well, there's the coffee guy. He's going to make coffee in the morning. So, or whenever we stopped along the road for a coffee break. But I'd use my AeroPress. I would press it. I would add water to it to dilute it a little bit amongst us, because the AeroPress can create kind of a concentrated, almost an espresso type coffee. So you can split it up and make more of an Americano out of it. I played around with pouring it in slowly and just letting it drip through for about almost a cup, and then press the rest of it through, fill it back up to the top and press it, just to get more volume out of it. But yeah, the 1 cup at a time is kind of a bummer,
Yeah. So first I want to say note for everybody, you drove up to Prudhoe Bay. For those who've been listening to the podcast for a while, you'll remember I talked about our adventure up the Dalton Highway towards Dead Horse this summer, in summer 2020, and going up above the Arctic Circle. That's the same road.
Yes.
And it is rather long and not particularly easy to drive on. And I too found, and I don't usually like pull over and make coffee out of the back of my car in the middle of the day, but I too found that to be entirely necessary on that road.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was, we had it timed, it was like, we'd get up and have our coffee, and then 11 o'clock we were pulling off again and getting another coffee,
Yeah.
So we had it,
there's a lot of white knuckling that happens on that on that road. I can't even imagine doing it on a motorcycle. So for everyone listening, like, imagine a road where the non-paved parts are the ones you hope for, because the paved parts, good in concept, actually are just these like unpredictable potholes, or what's called an ice heave, which is where the road like comes into its own natural speed bump over and over and over again for an unlimited amount of time. And you don't know that it's about to happen. So you hit it because there's no sign. So you hit it, and then you kind of go flying over, and you say a prayer for your tires, and you like wipe the sweat from your brow when you've made it. And then, as if this is not enough, you glance into your rearview mirror, shocked to find that while you've been focused on the potholes, there's a semi literally about to run you off the road, because this is the haul road, and the semis do not have any problem with the potholes, by the way, and they are coming down the hill whether you are or not. And you're thinking, my God, there has to be a place to pull off so I can let this thing go by because I can't handle this, but there is not. And so
exactly.
Yes,
you definitely had to have your head on a swivel.
Yeah, my God,
driving that road.
We only made it to Coldfoot. We didn't go the whole way because after a day out of that, I was like, okay, I've seen enough of that. Thanks. And the thing to do, of course, when you get to Prudhoe Bay is to, if there's a tourist, is to, hire the tour company so that you can go in the Arctic Ocean, because there's no private or public rather access to that without the tour company, because it goes through the oil field. Anyway, that's not running in 2020. And so we were like, You know what? Like, gonna go up there and tap the sign? No, thanks. Let's enjoy our day here in the Coldfoot area and then enjoy the drive back. So that's a road.
It is a road, that's for sure.
But I completely hear you. And then the other thing you said I want to touch back on is back to the coffee, is the AeroPress, because my complaint about the AeroPress is that it is very, very dark compared to what I usually drink. I'm a person who drinks an incredible amount of very weak coffee. I'm like, my coffee habit would be shocking and not looked upon with pride by you. So because I just I have a very nice coffee machine, a Breville coffee machine that I can set the darkness level on, and I have that sucker at 1.
Yeah.
And then I drink a lot of it. So it's a ceremony that I enjoy. But the AeroPress is just too dark for me. So I never even thought about making it and then cutting it with hot water.
Yeah, exactly.
Yummy. That totally makes so much sense. Cool.
And
okay, so.
But there are the other methods, like, you mentioned earlier, like Avita, or some of these decent freeze drieds that are out there now too. If you're getting out, that's so convenient, especially if you're packing. You don't want to.
Right.
AeroPress isn't that heavy, but it does take up some space. And if you're packing a backpack, which I did this year with my wife, we went hiking up in the Peters Hills, and it takes up space.
Yeah. So what do you use when you go backpacking?
I do bring the AeroPress.
It's a devotion.
It is. And I just want to figure out to do better and better and dial it in more and more. But I don't know. I like it.
It sounds like you're the right guy to have the job you have. So
right.
It's good. It's good news. It's all on brand. I like it.
But when you're out there though, I'm not a coffee snob. I'm like, you know what? I need my coffee. I need something warm in my hand, and I need it. I'm definitely not getting picky.
Absolutely. We already sort of touched on this, but making a lot of coffee is other than the drip. So do you ever French press? Do you ever do the mobile French press to,
Um,
amp up your volume?
yeah, I haven't really camping because I'm always afraid of the glass portion of the French press. And I know they have some that aren't glass now, but you know, years ago when before AeroPress were around, we would bring a French press, at least a car camping. And but I was always afraid of breaking it and then not having anything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No. Danger.
exactly.
Um, okay, and you just mentioned instant coffee. So I want to talk about that because there's several different kinds. And especially for the people who are listening to this and may not have experimented with this before, I want to make sure we differentiate between instant coffee and something like Via.
Mm.
And then I want to talk about what in the realm of that continuum is the best, tastiest, best cup of coffee option. So what's the difference between instant coffee and Via?
Well, I think
I'm,
I'm
I'm
not
thinking
sure I
like
can
in the
answer that question.
Folgers jar, right?
Oh,
Like
right, right.
like
Oh,
what's
they're
in the crappy, pardon
yeah,
me,
like your
church kitchen, like no,
flavor crystals or
yeah.
whatever it used to be.
Yes, yeah.
Right. Well, I think Starbucks definitely took it up a notch a while ago by creating the Via, and it's freeze dried coffee. It has a more of a coffee flavor to it than maybe your Folgers.
Yeah.
Um, it it's better, hands down, and there's been some real good efforts to try to take decent coffee and freeze dry it, and then be able to reproduce it by adding water. Um, and if people have played around with it now, it's I think it rolled out. I'm going to guess around 10 years ago, so between 5 and 10 years ago, Via came out, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a Starbucks product, but
Yeah.
um, and but other people have played with it, and we actually sent some coffee off a while ago to have freeze dried to try it out. It came back pretty good, but we didn't pursue it at the time. So,
Yeah.
but it does make for camping or for any kind of packing backcountry. It is convenient, since all you have to do is add water to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a company here in where I am in the Valley area of the Anchorage area, I guess,
Mhm.
if we're zooming out for folks who aren't here. Genesis, who's now making a instant-ish, coffee, not unlike Via, but it's in like a
Mhm.
tea bag. Have you
Oh, yeah.
tried anything like that?
Yeah, we have. We've played around with some packaging our own,
Yeah.
and trying to just treat it like a tea bag. It does work. It when we from what I remember when we were doing it, trying to get that dark cup of coffee was a little hard, but it does work for sure. And
Yeah,
it
it
is
tasted
easy.
like coffee. So
Yeah. Yeah. But you're on the number one
I know.
setting.
I know. I am a number one setting kind of girl. What can I say? What can I say? But I'm very proud of myself, I have to say, because I used to be a vanilla soy latte every morning
Oh,
person.
yeah.
And I've matured, let's put
Mhm.
it that way, over time to drinking just, an undisclosed number of pots of black coffee. So
It's funny how that I hear that over and over. And I started off when I was 30 years ago. A skinny latte was my favorite thing,
yeah.
and now it's oh gosh, for the past probably 20 years, it's been a sludge cup. So it's like
Who are we?
it's just
Our former selves would be so dismayed. So I don't think anybody because I don't think I've ever talked about this on the podcast before, but I used to, like many people my age, work in coffee shops, just sort of as a side gig, and I absolutely loved it because I loved talking to the people who would come in and get coffee, and the customers, and the my fellow coffee people. I did work for Starbucks for a little while, and I've worked for several independent coffee stores, across the country because that's what being a military spouse does to you. But I absolutely loved it. And of course, when you work for specifically Starbucks, you walk out of there with fancy drink things in your repertoire
Yeah.
And in your liking. And so for a long time there, I was a black and white mocha every day, which is not so good for the waistline. So yeah, it was my morning habit. Shockingly, when I stopped doing that, I lost some weight. What a surprise. So so okay, so speaking of though, a lot of people, no shame if you don't like black coffee. It is an acquired taste, just putting that out there. If that's you, and because you and I have been talking a lot about just making yourself for you, a cup of sludge, or for me, a quite watered down one at the campsite, what's the best way to do coffee outside for a more customized drink if that's the sludge or the cut isn't your style?
I, you could heat up milk and steam milk. Now you probably have to do that from a car camping scenario. You'd probably want to anyway, because you'd have to bring something to actually steam the milk with. And I know they have it out there where you can heat up water, create steam, and then you have a little knob and you can turn on your steam out in the backcountry. But
getting fancy.
That's getting fancy. That might be a little
lot
much
to carry.
I guess you could bring your syrup and you can add it, and you can have your little vanilla latte out there in the campground. But it's a lot.
Yeah, and now that I'm thinking about it, I think there are some flavored versions of the Via or products like that.
Mm-hmm.
That you can do like a flavored coffee. I'm not sure how much of that is coffee and how much of that is, like a powdered sugar milk thing going on.
Right.
Or how good it tastes, because I've never tried it. I can't imagine that it replicates the pumpkin spice latte very well, though.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think so.
No,
that would be a little challenging.
Maybe the best advice for if you're car camping particularly is to spot the nearest coffee stand on your way to the campsite. But in all seriousness, a lot of not state park campgrounds obviously, but actually maybe in many parts of the country this is too, not in Alaska, but a lot of these developed campgrounds actually have a coffee shop in their little store. I think I think Denali National Park has one in the Riley Creek campground store.
Yep.
So you may not be up a creek entirely if this is your thing, but Tim, like in all seriousness, when you're thinking about trying to get outside and make this part of your life, these are important considerations, and I don't want anybody to think that we're making fun of them, because I'm really not. Like, you better believe that I am. Before I do anything else, when I'm packing to go, I'm asking, okay, do we have the jet boil to make the hot water, to make the coffee? What is the situation?
And I have forgotten parts of those pieces where it's been like, oh no, we're in trouble.
Oh no. Yeah. In fact, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I, God bless Facebook memories, up popped a camping trip that we did right when we first started being camping people back in probably 2014. My kids were really little, and I was never a camping type of girl growing up, so this was all new to me. And then of course my husband is Army, and when you camp in the Army, it's not that fun. So so we were just sort of learning to do it as a family, and the connector for the camp stove that goes between the fuel and the stove was left at home. Yes. This is a very important part of the heating of things. And so he made dinner over the campfire, which did not go well. And the next day, of course, there's no hot water.
Right.
So
boy.
Yeah, and my Facebook post was something to the effect of, I'm still alive. Like, things are not looking good, but I'm still here, and that's how it is. Okay. So tell us, what don't you like to drink?
Coffee-wise?
Like, outside. Like, what do you like not do? Like, if anything else, my friends listening to this, do not do this. What is it?
I I would say, well, personally, I anything sweet. I just can't do sweetness with coffee. It just doesn't work. But I would percolators. I'm not a big fan of them. I'm not. It goes against a lot of things that in the coffee world we talk about. But when you're out there though, and you're waking up in the morning and you're just trying to get going, and maybe you're up late around the campfire. I mean, coffee's coffee, but I would say I would try other methods besides percolating.
What does it describe for us? What a percolator does? What does
so a percolator, typically it's a little, like it's aluminum pot, and inside you have a tube that comes up, and when the hot water starts to boil, the water will come up the tube and it perks out the top. Well, underneath that, at the very top of this pot, you also have your coffee. It's sitting in a little tin basket, and so the hot water comes up, it perks, the water goes through the coffee, drips down to the bottom, and it just keeps going around and around and around. It's really hot, and you tend to cook your coffee rather than brew your coffee. So it's a little hot for brewing, and it just gives it a flavor is particular to percolating. Not really, you're something where you have hot water, but not super hot water, and you're just over and over and over. You have to let it percolate for a while to extract the coffee out. Otherwise, it will come out like tea. So you do have to cook it to make it work.
And I found it to also produce a very nice sludge. So
yeah, right. Oh yeah,
wasn't my fave. So,
right.
But that's just, I don't want to chew on my coffee. Would like to drink it. So There you go.
But I just like that. The thing about being outdoors and with coffee, it's better. I don't even know. I think even just going outdoors, and sometimes I'll get up in the morning at home, in the summer mostly, but make my coffee and just go outside. And I don't know what it is. It just makes it better.
Yeah, and I agree. My new favorite morning coffee outdoor habit is when one cannot be around the campfire, is I bought myself a hot tub this pandemic, and and let me just tell you how great a cup of coffee while sitting in your hot tub is. It's pretty great.
That's pretty nice.
It's pretty close to the best. So, and I am really looking forward to seeing how great it is in the wintertime, because I suspect it's going to continue to be great.
I think so.
I'm pretty stoked about that.
Hot tub in the winter is pretty nice.
Oh yeah. I'm fully Alaskan now. I have a hot tub. I've checked all of the boxes. So there you go. All right. Now, I think as everyone can hear, I could talk about coffee for the rest of our lives.
Right.
But that's not what we have time for. So the podcast must end eventually. Therefore, we are now at the part where we talk about just some leftovers, list things I like to know from the guests,
Sure.
You being no exception. So my first thing I like to know about is, what is your favorite outdoor gear? Not necessarily your most essential, because we'll talk about that in a second, but just something that you love.
My sandals.
What kind?
They are the Chacos.
Okay. All right. Love a Chaco.
And where you can tighten them up and you can walk. You can just go in the water if you want to wade in the water. You can go climb over rocks or whatever. So you can take them to Hawaii, or you can take them to camping somewhere in Alaska. They work any place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love those.
I have a friend, actually, she's been on the podcast before. Her name's Kate Arnold, for anyone who wants to go back and check out her episode, who forgot her boots and climbed a mountain in Denali National Park in Chacos, snowfields included.
Oh my gosh.
Impressive or ridiculous? You decide. So, There you go. But you know what? She lived to tell about it, and her feet are no worse for wear. So we're gonna go with impressive. Anyway, most essential. What's your most essential outdoor gear?
I have a Mountain Hardwear packable raincoat.
Yes.
It gets small. It can keep you warm if you're cold. It'll keep you somewhat dry if it's raining hard, but all around it works really well.
Yeah.
And
yeah, you know, the things that work are the things that are are the most always the best for you. Mountain Hardwear, their stuff just really fits me well. Which is not to be, the importance of that is not to be underestimated. And so I have multiple jackets and even a pair of like pants that are like sleeping bags from them. The pants, we call them. And they're great, you know, and man, they just make some stuff that I don't know if they fit everybody great, but they fit me great. So I hear that. Okay, finally, if you close your eyes and just your best outdoor moment ever, just think about that. Where are you? What are you doing?
Okay, as I mentioned earlier, it's up this creek called Windy Creek in the Clearwater Mountains off of the Denali Highway, and there's no motor vehicles permitted. So you have to hike in or ride your bicycle in. And I went with my son, our first kind of camping, hunting experience together. He was a little nervous about doing it. And we went in. The first night we set up camp, and we're about almost 10 miles away from the truck. We have our bicycles and we set our tent up. He went to sleep and I sat there and with my spotting scope spotted 5 grizzly bears around our camp.
Holy crap.
So I was a little nervous about that. But, you know, did all the precautions and kind of said, well, going to bed, need to go to bed. So anyway, the next day, you know, he's at the time wasn't very outdoorsy, but we went back, we found a caribou up on a hill, and he went to go try to stalk this caribou. And I sat down at the road where our bikes were on and watched. And while I watched, I saw him go up this mountainside, and he was in a ravine, and he went up, and I could see the caribou still sitting there. And then my son started to creep across this mountain. It's probably about 1,000 feet above me. And I could just, with my binoculars, I could watch this thing going on. And he was creeping towards this caribou, and the caribou was eating on the side of the mountain. And as he got closer, I could see my son, Jay, sticking his head up and looking to see if he could see this caribou, but the curvature of the mountain, he couldn't see the caribou. So he would crawl closer and he'd stick his head up, and he'd crawl closer and stick his head up. And all of a sudden this caribou started walking towards him. And I was like, wow, what's going on here? Well, while this is going on, walking towards me on this road that we were riding in on was this porcupine. And so I'm watching my son up on this hill, and this porcupine's walking right towards me. And finally, before the thing's going up on the hill, I'm watching, the porcupine gets to my leg, and it puts its 2 front paws up on my leg as to like figure out what I was. And then it dawned on him like, oh, this isn't really a good thing to be doing. And he, of course, puffed out and turned away from me, and then he kind of ran off into the bushes. And so I'm still watching my son, and the caribou's walking towards him, and he's walking towards the caribou. And about the same time, the caribou sticks its head up to look like he heard something, and my son sticks his head up, and they meet eye to eye. And it was hands down the best moment. I just watching it all unfold. And of course, the caribou ran off, and that was the end of that. And just a great experience.
And no one was harmed by a porcupine. Good story.
No one was harmed by a porcupine. No.
Tim,
to see its little face looking at me was really something.
Yeah, I bet it was. I can't even. Yeah, a very unique, very Alaskan experience. Yeah. Tim, thanks so much for joining us on the Humans Outside podcast today.
Oh, you bet. Take care.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's episode of Humans Outside. If you've enjoyed this episode, why not give us a little love and leave a rating and review to make it easier for other listeners to find the podcast too? It really does make a difference. Until next time, we'll see you out there.